Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and thank you for joining us at the Maritime Manpower Forum 2021. A very warm welcome to all of you. The Maritime Manpower Forum is organized by the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, MPA, and the Singapore Maritime Foundation, SMF. It is also part of this week's Singapore Maritime Week. At this forum, we will discuss the issues of talent attraction and retention in the maritime industry, efforts to future-proof the maritime workforce, and the relevance of job redesign given the shifting jobs and skills needs of the industry. MPA Chairman, Mr. Meng, will be opening the forum by sharing his thoughts and about our initiatives on accelerating workforce transformation. After that, our colleagues from Mercer Singapore will walk us through a presentation on the future of work in maritime. This will be followed by a panel discussion by three visionaries on talent development for maritime, centered on the theme of effective workforce transformation. The Q&A session will be moderated during the panel discussion. You may post questions you have in the Slido box throughout the event, and we will try to address them during the Q&A segment. Without further ado, may I please invite Mr. Meng, Chairman of MPA, to deliver his opening address. Mr. Niam, please.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. A warm welcome to the Maritime Manpower Forum. For those of you who have joined us at other Singapore Maritime Week events throughout this week, I hope that you have found them useful for appreciating the new frontiers and shifting paradigm in the maritime sector. In order to minimize the impact of the COVID-19 on businesses, we have seen companies in every sector introduce new ways of working and use technology to aid business continuity. And in many cases, this has led to new business models, forced companies to go digital, at least earlier than they ever wanted, and also innovate and find creative ways to survive. If COVID taught us anything, it is that if your organization don't change and don't do it quickly, it won't survive. What we should be thankful for is that the maritime global supply chain remained largely intact. For this, let me thank all those working in the maritime industry and our seafarers for ensuring the stable supply of especially essential goods across countries today. Otherwise, this current crisis would have been far worse for all, because clearly no countries will be spared in this interconnected world. While 2020 threw us many challenges, it also presented us with opportunities. I want to say a few words about attracting talent from a position of resilience. Let me briefly mention 4 areas where we see more jobs being created in the next few years in Singapore's maritime sector. First, as our next generation port in Tuas gradually begin operations, much of which will be digitalized and automated, more skilled jobs will be created in the port ecosystem. For instance, PSA will need more systems engineering professionals to design and maintain the port's complex automated systems. Second, we will be working hard to bring in more investments for our International Maritime Centre. Specifically, we are targeting to bring in 20 billion in business spending commitments from shipping companies between 2020 to 2024. The economic spin-offs from this would provide more job opportunities for our workforce. Third, as part of our strategy to identify and adopt new technologies, MPA will support more maritime R&D projects, and we aim to triple the number of maritime technology startups supported under our programs by 2025. We hope this will spur new, highly skilled jobs for our graduates and others to look forward to. Finally, you are aware of our plans to go green and to develop alternative energy sources. We hope to embark on a green journey which will make us more relevant for what is to come, not just in the area of greener fuel, but also being less reliant on fossil fuels for all our operations. This will require different skill sets and job types, which will again be available for our workforce. So, if things work out, we will have the jobs. But we need to attract talent to think of the exist of the maritime sector and to develop existing talent. How can we do this? MPA and Singapore Maritime Foundation, SMF, will intensify efforts to attract and develop talents in the following ways. First, MPA has started a talent attraction campaign. Some of you may have seen videos in mainstream media and alternative social media about the promising prospects in our sector. We had a Channel News Asia documentary, Colours of the Sea, on 4 millennials pursuing their dreams in the maritime sector. We even had political office holders like our Senior Minister of State, Chee Hong Tat, talking about prospects in the sector in one of the videos. These are part of MPA's efforts to inform job seekers that our sector is multifaceted, inclusive, and exciting. More will need to be done, perhaps making use of our heroes like the recent International Maritime Award recipients, our ship captains, individual owners of our maritime startups, to explain what they do and make the sector attractive for our younger workers. Second, SMF will enhance their Singapore Maritime Connect website to improve the functionalities and user experience regarding job vacancies and individualized job matching. It is an important portal, and we hope to make the user experience a really good one. Third, you may also be aware of the recently announced Maritime Leadership Program. Over 10 days, it will help junior management staff gain fresh perspectives on global maritime issues, develop leadership capabilities, and cultivate industry networks. The inaugural run will take place in the second half of 2020, and we look forward to working with companies to develop our business leaders of tomorrow. MPA and SMF cannot do all this alone. We need the support of all our maritime companies. To this end, I'm encouraged to see that the maritime community remains committed to investing in the next generation. This year, more than 30 forward-looking organizations have generously pledged $2.5 million towards the Maritime One Scholarship Program. Amongst them are 4 new partners: Mercer Group, Eastern Pacific Shipping, Atlantic Lloyd, and Equatorial Marine. Later, colleagues from Mercer will be sharing about why and how some maritime jobs might potentially look different in the future. Their sharing will help guide the subsequent discussion and sharing by our HR and transformation leaders. After today, MPA and our partners will conduct industry consultations to discuss the maritime jobs that may be suitable for job redesign and seek like-minded partners to work with moving forward. I invite you to come forward and be part of this movement. Today's session might not provide all the answers you are looking for, but I hope it will provide you with some direction and food for thought. MPA looks forward to working with your organizations to shape the future of work in maritime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Niam, for your encouragement on how the maritime industry could go about accelerating workforce transformation. Indeed, while future maritime jobs may look different, maritime companies can kickstart forward planning by prioritizing talent attraction and development with the support of MPA and SMF. We also encourage companies that are keen to find out more about recruitment support and profiling initiatives to reach out to the Maritime Singapore Connect office. Next, Mercer Singapore will be sharing about how technology and business trends could disrupt and change maritime jobs, and how job redesign could potentially help to make maritime jobs more productive and attractive. May I invite the speakers from Mercer Singapore, Mr. Kabir Nath, Associate Principal of Talent Services, and Ms. Rupali Gupta, Talent Services Leader, to share their insights with us. Kabir and Rupali, please.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Chairman. It really is our pleasure to be here and share the stage with all of you in an esteemed panel of speakers today. On behalf of Mercer, just wanted to thank MPA for the journey that we walked together. It's been a long one, but a really fulfilling one. Right, so we have about 30 minutes. My colleague and I will divide and conquer. We're going to begin with walking you through some key objectives of the maritime study that we ran, key industry trends, and then spend some time sharing what that translates to from a skills framework perspective. I'm happy to say that we have launched the enhanced version of the Sea Transport Skills Framework. I want to do a bit of a click and explore with you today, show you how to use it and make the most out of that very rich information. Maybe the most interesting part of today's chat will be section 4 and 5. We want to spend some time thinking about the potential disruptions impacting the sector, how that is impacting jobs, skills, and really what the way is forward. Let's begin. The manpower study, a quick overview and key objectives. We ran this piece of work with the sector with two key objectives in mind. Number one, how do we provide MPA with information, insights that help them with manpower planning and policy development? Number two, providing industry, information, workforce information on compensation, jobs, skills that will help you take talent management decisions in the coming year. We had 3 modules. The first module was around benefits and compensation. We ran a survey with the industry across all the subsectors, and participants were given reports on the latest benefits, pay packages, policies across the sectors. The second module was a skills framework. As I mentioned, we enhanced the existing Sea Transport Skills Framework in line with existing and future demands of the industry. You can access that today in a very intuitive, simple way. And lastly, a workforce planning initiative, where we essentially ran a thought exercise and tried to understand what potential disruptions will impact the way we work, the skills needed to do our work, and how will that transform the value we bring to our organizations. Let me now talk you through some key industry trends. It's funny, we began this journey in a pre-COVID world, and now it's ending in a post-COVID world, and COVID has had so much to do with the way businesses today have changed, molded, rethought, repositioned. In the short term, of course, the sector is no different like anyone else. There are many operational challenges that we've all had to deal with border restrictions and resurgences of the virus. But the question really is, and I'm one of those believers that believes that at every crisis breeds opportunity. What is the future? What does the future look like? Is it a healthy future? And I'm happy to say that the data and the discussions that we have had with industry indicate just that. Prospects are healthy, and the long-term prospects and opportunities look extremely bright. The obvious disruptor or change which will really help us get to the next level will be technology and IT, sometimes used interchangeably, but very different things. I think we spoke to it, echoed the same sentiment that both technology and IT will play an extremely important role in the sector moving forward. As Chairman mentioned, the sector is no different. COVID has asked and brought upon a lot of organizations asking themselves how digital they are. We're seeing a lot of infusion and investments being made in freight and port technologies. We see a huge room of growth for information tech workforce. And we're seeing the infusion of so many startups across the value chain, whether that's performance management, capacity optimization, thinking beyond the vessel, even reinventing the business model. With all that push and importance that technology and IT will have in the future and navigating through this ambiguity that we're all in, of course, that has an impact on jobs and skills, right? And digital skills will continue to be in demand in the coming years. This is above and beyond, of course, traditional technical competence that are so valued in the sector. So, for example, seafaring skills will be extremely important. You see a few of them mentioned on the slide here. One of the interesting themes that emerged as we engaged the industry was people talking about commercially aware technical talent. As the sector transitions from a traditionally family-run, asset-heavy, asset play to a service-oriented sector, from a static to a dynamic future, what are some of those commercial skills and digital skills that will be important? analytics, cybersecurity, modeling, critical skills that will impact the way we all work, regardless of where you sit. What appears as an emerging theme, and Chairman spoke about leadership, is also the concept of core skills. And we often at Mercer call them the skills that build skills. These are the set of skills that when we ask industry, what really helps you navigate into this future? What will help you stay relevant? It's the set of skills that help you think critically, sense-making, decision-making. The set of skills that help you interact, right? Collaboration, communication, some sort of digital literacy, fluency. And then the set of skills and the cluster of skills that help you stay relevant. The ability to adapt, influence, learn in an agile way. These skills will be increasingly important in the coming years. The question we ask, and organizations are asking themselves, how much importance and how do we have the right systems and interventions in place to really mold and curate and develop people with the skills that big skills? So with that section on key industry trends and skills almost seamlessly brings us to the next section, which is the skills framework for sea transport. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the skills framework, what is it? It really is a common reference point, a wonderful repository of information on jobs, career pathways, technical skills, soft skills. And it serves to be a common reference point for individuals, employers, training, as well as government. As I said, we refreshed this framework for sea transport. We enhanced it. We try to provide a bit of a future lens in the way jobs are changing and skills are changing. You see here on the slide the construct, which aligns with the skills future construct. At a macro level, we begin with a career map. So you could see the various sectors, subsectors within sea transport, zoom into any one stream, and then get a visual view of the jobs and career pathways in that stream. And you see here for shipping operations a sample illustration. It almost looks like an org chart. If you're inquisitive enough, then you'd like to find out what these jobs do and what skills these jobs need. You could click on any of the jobs, and as you see on the right, bottom right of the screen, you have instantly a view of what these jobs do, what critical responsibilities they need to perform, and most importantly, what set of technical skills and soft skills are required to do this job effectively. I know I've spoken quite a bit. Let's touch it, feel it, see it. As I said, one of the exciting outputs of our partnership with MPA has been taking this really rich information into a simple, intuitive digital output. So what you could do, and this is what I do whenever I want to access this information, I go onto Google and I type Skills Future MPA, and it takes you to the web page you see on the left of my slide. If you scroll down, you see a little green icon, which allows you to click into the portal. I'm now going to show you how to navigate through that portal. Right. What you will be seeing on your screens is the home page. So lots of ships moving around. Click to enter. And now you see the master homepage for the tool. On the left, you have the navigation bar with the different tracks and streams. Below that, you have the technical skills and soft skills needed across the board. Let's see how we can use this and get the most out of this tool. Now, let's say I'm someone who wants to find out a little bit more about shipping, and specifically shipping operations. I click on shipping operations. It now takes me to the career pathways or organization map for all of those typical structures within shipping operations. Let's say I want to find out now a little bit more about ship agents and what they do. I click on a ship agent. It now takes me to the view of the critical responsibilities of the role. And as you see, if you scroll down on the left, the technical skills needed for each of those jobs and the soft skills needed for that job and the level of proficiency needed. Now let's say I want to find out a little bit more about budgeting. I click on budgeting, and that takes me to a view of the technical skill. What is budgeting across different levels of proficiency? Now let's say you want to look at all the skills associated that we have developed for the sector. You go back to the home page, right? And you see you see at the bottom left, the technical skills and the generic skills. Let's click on the technical skills. Wonderful. Here is where you have all the technical skill categories. Let's say you want to find out a little bit more of this technical skills required in cargo ops. You click on cargo operations, and now you have a very clean map of all the technical skills required at different levels of proficiency. And similarly, you could click on any one of those skills and find out more. As you can see, believe it or not, I'm doing this without looking at the screen. So that's how intuitive and simple the tool is. And it really has been built to help you as organizations use this and contextualize it to deal with the various talent issues we're dealing with. With that, I'm going to go back to the presentation and move on. The next section is around potential disruptions. And Mercer, along with the industry, ran this thought exercise where we just spent some time asking questions around what are the key disruptors in the sector and how are they impacting jobs and skills? It was a qualitative study that we did, and I'm going to share with you some of the findings of that. Like I said, it was a thought exercise, and the real purpose of this entire exercise was to give you organizations information and the ability to think about and anticipate some of the changes. We appreciate that every organization is at different parts of its evolution, but we also believe that this is a wonderful starting point as you think about the various disruptors and how jobs and skills may change. So fundamentally, the process involves thinking about the key disruptors. We call them disruption factors. You see them on the slide here. I'm going to move from the left to the right. The most obvious disruptor is, of course, technology maturity, adoption, right? It's the level of maturity of the solutions, technology solutions available, as well as the rate of adoption. How available and accepted are some of these technologies. Technology is a big disruptor, of course. The second disruptor is business transformation. So how are business models changing based, COVID has impacted so many businesses. Competition. So what is the relative cost attractiveness of similar expertise in neighboring markets and in different industries? Regulations and standards, of course, have a lot to do with how we are changing. The regulations keep changing, standards are changing, they impact the knowledge and skills we need. And lastly, labor market conditions. How attractive are some of these jobs? What are the skills needed for these jobs? How easily can I access them? So to us, these are 5 key disruptors. What did we do with this information? Number one, we collected insights on each of these disruptors for all the tracks within sea transport. We then analyzed how these specific disruptors are impacting specific tracks. And then we classified them onto potential degrees of disruption into a high, medium, low impact. Then we said, right, now we have a view of which tracks within the sector may potentially have a higher impact of disruption versus a low impact. Let's now zoom into the jobs. So we zoomed into the various jobs in each of those tracks. And then we, in fact, evaluated all the critical tasks and work functions and asked ourselves which of these individual tasks at the job level could be disrupted. And then we classified those into stable jobs, reconfigured jobs, and declining jobs. Stable jobs really are jobs that continue to be largely dominated by people, given the expertise it may require, the competence it require. Reconfigured jobs are those jobs that we believe could be in the next 5 to 10 years impacted or augmented, supported by technology and the various disruptions that we see. And then declining jobs really are those jobs where a large component of the value that these jobs bring are intensive, labor intensive, repeatable, and hence threatened by automation. The lengths that we did this analysis was between a 5 and 10 year time frame. Of course, nobody can claim to know what the future will look like, but what we've tried to do is try and make it real for organizations. So let me very quickly walk you through 3 tracks that we have tried to capture the journey of disruption. You see here shipping operations, ship agency track. Our analysis and understanding based on what we heard is that this potential track could be a high level of potential disruption. If you look on the left of the screen, what is driving that? Technology, regulations and standards, as well as labor market conditions. A lot of what SHIB agents do today, the documentation processing activities and so on, can potentially be digitized. We see even a lot of streamlining happening from regulatory authorities, from the regulatory authorities' point of view. Electronic documentation is being infused and really making that process easy. Some leading organizations are also adopting RPA for repetitive document processing tasks. Now, what does that mean from a jobs perspective? If I draw your attention to the right, the 3 jobs within the ship agency track, the ship agency manager, the ship agent, as well as the shipping clerk, you will see that the ship agency manager we've classified as a stable job. Why? Because the key tasks of this job, whether that's preempting disruptions, troubleshooting, liaising with different stakeholders, requires people and will continue to require people, and it requires expertise. Whereas when you look at the ship agent job, we believe it could definitely be augmented and coordinated by technology, right? The whole documentation, coordination aspects of this job could definitely be supported by technology. But when you look at the shipping clerk role, what we're seeing is that a majority of tasks could be disrupted. And automation is taking away a lot of that activity. And potentially in the coming years, you could see less requirements of people doing that role. Now, what does that mean for you as an organization? And that's really the food for thought at the bottom. How are you thinking about upskilling? How are you thinking about making these roles more attractive? How are you thinking about redesigning these jobs? I want to leave you with that to think about. Very quickly, walk you through another example, technical superintendents, such a critical job role in the sector, right? We believe that this could potentially be medium in terms of the impact of disruption, potentially. What's driving a lot of the disruption for technical superintendents track is really the technology maturity and adoption, as well as the lack of local manpower. Let me zoom into the lack of local manpower. Industry still regards seafaring experience as critical for these jobs, right? The question is, do we have enough of experienced local seafarers? So as we think about jobs, we believe that a large extent of these technical superintendent roles, at least at the middle and senior manager level, could be augmented and enabled by technology, right? Be more digitally driven. The question we then ask ourselves is, how do we bridge that capability gap? Do we have the right training ecosystems to be able to do that? How do we redefine the role so that it becomes more data-driven? How do we identify high potential seafarers early in their journey and then accelerate their training and prepare them for superintendent roles earlier than later in their careers? With that, I am going to then now transition to and pass the mic on to my colleague. We've spoken about disruption, and we've spoken about how disruptions are impacting jobs and skills. But what next? How are organizations dealing with this disruption? And that's where what lies at the heart of that conversation is job redesign. And Rupali is going to walk you through that journey. Over to you, Rupali.
Thank you, Kabir, for taking this audience through all the wonderful changes, actually both to Chairman and to Kabir, right, to talk about all the changes, how people have stepped up, how the industry is responding to some of these changes. Let's talk about what happens next. So with all of this uncertainty, all of the changes, why job redesign? How do you do it? How do you start thinking about it? And what kind of benefits you can expect? So that's going to be the focus of what I'll talk about. I want to start by saying you're not alone. Every organization is going through a changing business landscape, pressures on profitability, on margins, a whole new workforce dynamics, whether it's an aging workforce, whether it's multiple generations at work, whether it's like a whole surge of retirement for critical positions. Everybody is going through that challenge and different sizes and shapes of that challenge. And finally, labor productivity. How do we bring human machine together? How do we make it work? You think about geospatial tracking, drones. These are things we didn't even dream about 20 years ago. They are real today, and they will be the way people work tomorrow. With that, what can companies do? Companies can start looking at their work processes. What is the work we are doing? Do we really need to do it? Is it necessary? Can a human do it? Can a machine do it? Can we stop doing it? And can we think of a new way of doing what we do for the outcome we need? We look at technology, which kind of goes hand in hand. What is changing out there? All the use cases and just tripling of the startups, like Chairman said. If that's what's happening in the sector, how do we integrate these new solutions into the way and into our daily work? And then with all of this, we are left with people and we're left with jobs. How do we make them richer? How do we make them more attractive? How do we get younger people? How do we get non-seafaring people? Loads and loads of questions for us to answer here. Why should we do it? Because we get an agile workforce. You can move people around. You can borrow skills. You can lend skills. There's a whole productivity cost optimization play. You optimize your manpower. You have a far better employee experience. People actually bring their hearts to work every single day. And ultimately, the reason we exist, and all of us, we exist for our customer. And that's really one of the key benefits we're looking for. The big and tough question now is, okay, I want to do JR. I want to go undertake a job redesign journey. How? How do I start? What do I do? My first tip, and Mercer and I have been leading job redesign for a long, long, long time now. I must say, it's very intense. It's life-changing. It's job-changing. And it makes big, big differences to the business. So how do you start? You start with the end in mind. What is the end here? We want to improve productivity. We want to leverage technology and make maritime jobs more attractive. To do that, what we've tried to give you here is a 3x2 matrix. So Kabir talked for a while about the potential impact of disruption, and that's on the y-axis. So if you think about, is the disruption low, medium, or high? And that's very clearly available in the report. And on the other hand, you look at, is this going to impact us? What's the time horizon? Will this impact us right away? Will it impact us in the long term? And the third criteria, there's a lot of criteria to think about, so I don't want to confuse you. What I'm doing here is taking a few simple, easy criteria. And then we start taking the size of the workforce. Again, this is indicative. This is based on the BNC data. You may come back and say, oh, it's not scientific, it's not exact. We've already called that out. The point here is to think about, when you start throwing all these variables together, it gives us a framework to look at which are the jobs that are most impacted, the largest in terms of the workforce, that impacts a lot of people, impacts a lot of organization, impacts then your margins, your profitability, your revenue. And then on the right, there's there's two more criteria. And think about, is there a need to make this job more attractive? Let's take a shipping analyst, for example, or let's take a vessel cost controller, for example. May not be the most interesting job in the landscape of all jobs, yet it's a critical position. It's an entry pipeline. That's where people come in. You build them through the years. You give them the career paths to come in and grow in the organization. Is there a need to make it more attractive? That's one criteria. And then finally, are we attracting and developing the right talent pools? So we start looking at, what is the current talent pool I have? What are the future talent pools I want to attract? And answer those questions with all of these criteria to land on jobs. Again, this is not cast in stone. This is just a framework to get started on thinking about, where do I start? Once you start, I promise, I don't mean to confuse you. Once you start, there's an art and a science. What I have on the screen is the science, because there's simple steps. What looks simple on the screen, you start with some diagnosis, you start by understanding data, where am I going, where's my customer, what are my customer needs, what are my business imperatives, collect all that data, mine through it, look at where the stress points are, where the pain areas are. Then there's a design aspect to it, saying, okay, how do we redesign, how do we integrate the technology, the people, the jobs, how do we uplift them, how do we create career paths? And finally, there's the implementation or the testing that we call out, which is really trying to see, once we implement a new technology, the new job, the new work process, how does it work? Does it work well? Do people want to come in? Do they want to do these jobs? And are we getting the results we expected when we gathered the data and did the design? So again, art and science, not to confuse you. let's look at what have other companies got by doing job redesign. I'll take 3 examples. One is a hotel, and these are all cases that we've worked on. One is a hotel. One is in the special needs education sector, and the third is in the long-term care sector. If you look at some of the challenges, very similar. Staff shortage, changing demands of students, of people, a rapidly aging population. On the second problem statement, you can see it's literally consistent. Difficult to attract and retain talent. Like I said, you're not alone. Every single organization is finding it really, really hard to attract and retain talent. One, because the talent pool may not be big enough for the new areas and new jobs that we want to attract in. And let me just go horizontally. So for this hotel, where we had staff shortages at peak periods, not enough talent, we implemented automated check-in counters. So what we saw was guests were waiting for a long time. We automated that check-in, check-out from a 3-hour window where people took to check in, queuing, asking for documents, paperwork. It went down to 15 minutes. At the same time, what makes it really easy and understandable and relatable is ultimately the staff is now being retrained to, instead of taking papers from guests and manually entering all their data, actually troubleshooting, helping guests figure out, oh, why are you here? How long are you staying? What else can I help you with? As a result, we saw a huge improvement in productivity, 3 hours to 15 minutes. Non-value tasks were restructured. Staff could now upsell, revenues went up, obviously, and worker capabilities were enhanced. Similarly, I'll go down to the last one, which is in the healthcare sector. We know in Singapore, the population is rapidly aging. It's really hard to attract local talent in support care roles. So these are the assisted daily living tasks, bathing, showering, diaper changing. What did we do here? We created a new role, took all the tasks that go in, looked at a role that has a mix of jobs and tasks that make it engaging, that make it interesting, because people in the healthcare sector come because they have a passion. They have a passion to help the elderly. How do we unplug it? By giving them more interactive tasks and mixing their job nicely so that they get to see a senior through the life cycle. Plus, these now become high-tech. Well, not completely high-tech, but introducing enough technology so the job is not completely manual and as stressful as it used to be. The results we expect to see, improved job attractiveness, increase in the job size, because the job which was purely assisted daily living now has aspects of therapy, has aspects of nursing, has aspects of managing technology, and improved wage outcomes. So different outcomes, different scenarios, similar challenges, and really good benefits of doing JR. With that, I hand over back to my colleague Kabir to kind of sum all of this together for you. Thank you. Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Rupali. I was definitely excited to hear about how job redesign can really help you think about the future, the ambiguous future that we're all in. Right. So much has been shared, so much has been said. What next? Look, you can see that MPA and the various partners are doing a lot to be able to help you think about what the future could look like. I want to leave you with 3 messages. What next? Number 1, productivity is an issue. And how do we attract and retain the best talent will continue to be a challenge that we will have to address. Let's address it sooner than later. Number 2, there's disruption all around us. Jobs are changing, skills are changing. And we as individuals, the onus lies on us to think and preempt some of that change. Of course, there's a lot of really good information now at your disposal to help you on that journey. As one of the panelists said in my discussions with him a few days earlier, whatever will be automated. It's up to us to now think about what that means from a skills perspective, from a core skills perspective, leadership skills perspective, equally critical as we think about the road ahead. And lastly, redesigning jobs could help you improve the way you utilize your talent, the way you redeploy talent as your business changes, as it helps you increase productivity. And I can say with surety that early adopters will definitely have a competitive advantage. Now, don't believe me. Hear it from the horse's mouth, which is what I want to now transition to next, a wonderful panel discussion, and hear them echo some of this really from their on-the-ground experiences. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kabir and Rupali, for the interesting sharing on how maritime jobs may look different in future, and on how job redesign could help companies and the workforce prepare for tomorrow. The presentation has left us with important unanswered questions. What are the challenges and possible remedies as we begin workforce transformation? This brings us to the next segment, an exciting panel discussion. There will be a 15-minute Q&A segment, and I would like to encourage all of you to type your questions in the Slido box. On our panel today are 3 veterans from the maritime and supply chain industry, helming different portfolios, coming together to share their perspectives on effective workforce transformation. Our moderator, Ms. Melissa Key, Chief Human Resources Officer of Kuok, Singapore, currently heads the group's corporate HR and corporate communications functions. Prior to joining Kuok, Singapore, Melissa worked in multiple industries. She has a deep passion for leading change and organizational transformation. Next, we have Mr. Nakul Malhotra, who is no stranger to many of us in the maritime industry. As Vice President of Open Innovation and Marine Products for Wilhelmsen Ships Service, he is a keen advocate for an open innovation philosophy and a strong proponent of collaboration between industry expertise and new age technology capabilities. Our third guest, Mr. Thomas Knudsen, is currently Managing Director of Toll Group and has over 25 years of experience in shipping, freight forwarding, and contract logistics. He has lived and worked across Asia, Australia, the United States, Europe, and the Middle East. He is also passionate about the ocean and is involved in youth education, advocacy, and conservation. Without further ado, may I please invite Ms. Melissa to kick off the panel discussion.
Thank you, Natasha. We're very excited today to be part of the Singapore Maritime Week and also to kick off the inaugural Maritime Manpower Forum for the first year. And today, we are going to deep dive further on the topic of effective workforce transformation. And I'm very excited to have our fellow panelists here, I believe, who are very excited to share their experience. But let me first touch on a little bit before I kick off the first question. With so much said this week already, one thing for sure is that we will definitely adopt more technology in the way we do business. And also with a growing momentum for a sustainable future, I firmly believe that the maritime industry is poised for a deep transformation. Now, these may seem like a monumental task with many unknowns, right? But I also believe that disruptions also present plenty of opportunities to pivot and innovate, to stay ahead. And before I kick off the first question, another thing to note also in my observation is what separates the highest performing organizations from the rest is their ability to thrive in an ever-changing environment by investing in their workforce, to stay agile, innovative, and relevant. So let me first kick off the first question. Let's bring the future forward. Enough said about the future of shipping. So imagine the future of work in the maritime industry where key disruptive forces have impacted how work is done across sea transport job roles. What is the immediate focus required at the management level to facilitate the workforce transformation now? Nakul, would you like to kick it off?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me just say that I'm really excited about the topic and the fact that we're having the forum. I think maritime manpower transformation is a topic close to my heart, largely because it's very personal. I've sort of undergone a transformation from being a seafarer to being an advocate for innovation and technology in the industry. And so taking that example, I think, to answer your question, and of course, really well laid out, Melissa, I think leadership is fundamentally changing. I think that's really important. I think, largely speaking, I think in the maritime space, we're very used to a hierarchical, instructive form of leadership. And I think when you see this level of uncertainty and complexity, when you see the kind of transitions that are taking place, I think it's really important and something that leaders themselves have to accept. They can't have the answers to everything. And I think this ability to open up, to be able to create safe spaces, to be able to encourage collaboration internally, but also externally, to be able to be comfortable in saying, look, I'm not sure, let's try a couple of options. We'll also then encourage, let's say, the millennials, the new generation. I think, the new generation is enthusiastic and gets motivated by a different set of parameters, perhaps compared to previous generations. So I think really it's a huge topic, obviously, but I think what I want to emphasize is leadership fundamentally now is about inspiration, it's about creativity, it's about creating safe spaces for people to try, fail, learn, and then deliver unimaginably fantastic solutions. I think that's really fundamental.
Great that you say that, because I think I would further sum it up that leaders may not have all the answers today. But to find the answers in order to move forward, they must know how to organize and facilitate and collaborate across the organizations to get to that point. Thomas, do you have anything more to add to that?
Well, I'm very much aligned with the positions stated. I think this idea that our industry has been built on professionals who have gone through a long career progression, learned the trade. If you're a captain of a ship, you've done your yards throughout the organization, and that has led you to this level of expertise. And traditionally, that level of expertise was really truly valued. I do think that as we move forward, that will change. Because we don't have the answers and we don't necessarily understand the technology. And actually, it might be that a 25-year-old has the understanding of the technology. And it's tough to acknowledge that you spent your entire life learning something and you thought that you were going to be the expert, and you're now the ignorant in the room. But the other side of that is also, we still are the ones who understand what the business is. And I think our role is to connect that. So be curious, say, what's the problem that we're trying to solve for our customers? Ultimately, they're moving a sofa from one place to another place, and we understand how that's physically done. How can we leverage technology and use the people who understand technology in our business and integrate it rather than seeing it as a threat?
Fabulous. Well, I think each of you talk a little bit on culture, not quite that, but I want to go deeper into that. Because I believe that leadership and culture matter in driving an effective transformation outcome. And I want to quote McKinsey in one of their research where they quoted that 70% of transformation fail, and 70% of those failures are due to cultural-related issues. And as you know, maritime comes with a deep maritime culture and traditions. How do we unpack this?
That's really interesting. So I think at least in Williamson, the culture has been a big part of what we do. Our vision for the company is shaping the maritime industry, and full well knowing we can't do it individually, and full well knowing that that's predicated on embracing new skill sets, new people, new talent, also across industries. Now, fundamentally, when you start to do that, you're creating a little bit of a scenario where you're bringing in, if I can use the word, foreign or alien talent or positions into an organization, and the organization has to be able to embrace that. And I think fundamentally, therefore, the cultural element of leadership, I absolutely subscribe to it. I think if we pick up a little bit from the last comment, so if leadership is really about orchestration, then the culture has to be about embracing the consequences of that orchestration. Right from social skills and being able to connect with people you haven't connected to before, but also being open to a learning mindset, a growth mindset, recognizing what you don't know connecting it with what you do know. I think a statement that I really like to make, and I've recently finished 20 years in the Williamson Group, so I say, I still enjoy, after 25 years in this industry, I still enjoy sharing what I know and learning what I don't. I think in summary, at least my view is that fundamentally is the cultural element we want to try to bring wider in the industry. Share what you know, learn what you don't.
Okay. Thomas, I'm sure you came from a different industry. Share with us, what one thing we could learn that we can adopt, right, in maritime from your experience.
Yeah, I think I used to work in the maritime industry for a long, long time, and it's a proud industry that has been there for a long, long time, dating thousands and thousands of years back. And I think most people in maritime or shipping think of themselves as shipping people. And I actually think that's a little bit of a problem because when I buy a sofa, I don't really care what color of a ship it arrived on, what type of ship it arrived. What I do care about is my sofa in my living room on Tuesday. And I think we should think more of ourselves as logisticians or problem solvers of customers' problems. Traditionally, the biggest challenge of moving something from Asia to Europe was actually the logistical, physical shipping, right? Yeah. Shipping was difficult, dangerous, complex, and so on. And I'm not trying to say that it's not hard anymore, but it has changed. And really, where our customers are looking, are saying, well, why can't I have the same visibility as when I'm buying a meal on Deliveroo? On Deliveroo, I know who's picking it up, what time did they pick it up, where is it, and when is it going to be on my table. I'm buying a sofa here, and now it's stuck on a ship in Suez. When will that sofa be in my living room? Yeah. Who do I call? So I think we need to change away from thinking of ourselves as we move ships to rather we are trying to solve a customer issue, because I think if we don't change our mindset, somebody will change it for us, and that's very unpleasant.
Wow.
I love the analogy. If you don't mind, Melissa, I want to pick up a little bit on that, because it's something I kind of think about is on the weekends we get to use the Amazons and the Grabs and the Lazadas and all of this kind of stuff, and then we need to come to work on Monday at 9 o'clock. And we need to forget about all the ability of transparency and visibility and convenience. And now we think about it with some of the newer talent we want to attract. Now, they've grown up in a world where their whole life can be operated on their smartphone. To expect them to come to work on Monday morning at 9 o'clock and say, no, it doesn't work like that, that's a challenge.
That's interesting you said that. I think it requires a paradigm shift and also integration of how we live in our lives at home and at work.
Exactly.
And you pick it up, I think that's perfect point that both of you have picked up, because more often than not, when we try to drive any digital initiatives, sometimes it takes a lot more effort to do that at work than at home. And you have quoted a fabulous example about Deliveroo and all that, and why can't it be done at work? What can we learn from other industries which have already been disrupted? Right? The question is, should we disrupt ourselves or should we wait to be disrupted?
Well, I think we should disrupt ourselves, because you never want to be at the receiving end of disruption. And I think it's understanding where the disruption takes place. I think that if you look at shipping, and I'm primarily within container shipping, is that we're still moving a container from A to B. And it's still happening on a ship that sails, whether it's 15 or 20 knots, doesn't really matter. I don't think that necessarily is going to be disrupted in the near term. People are going to do it smarter, they're going to do it different, but the basics of their industry is going to remain. But it's much more that visibility and understanding of where the product is, what's happening to it, what can I do with it if something has changed. And that's my point. If you want to be in maritime and be successful, you can either be a provider of the space on the ship, and that might be a good place to be. Yeah. But if you look at what has happened in other industries where Amazon has come in, they're providing an end-to-end customer experience. And the people who provide the assets might not always love to be part of that, because they lose value. So I think we need to think about how do we retain the value, how do we create that value for the customer, so we're not just the provider of a physical asset. And that requires exactly the Deliveroo, or the Lazada, or the Amazon, or the Grab experience.
Absolutely. I think, this concept of what will be disrupted is a really important element that needs to be evaluated, because where innovation can go horribly wrong is to focus on sort of the wrong end of the disruption cycle, if I can call it that. And that happens sometimes. You get caught in a hype, and you sort of suddenly imagine that, you know what, actually shipping won't be about physical stuff, we're just going to teleport things. Now, maybe we will in the future, but not right now, right?
Yeah.
So then what will be disrupted? And what will be disrupted is the simplicity, the transparency, the visibility, the customer experience, as Thomas was mentioning. I think these are really important elements. And what that means then is, then we want to, as you mentioned as well, how do we do it? So we want to bring in talent from the outside. How we connect that with our domain experts. So you can't sort of isolate them. You can't ring fence them and say, reinvent shipping in a room, while the rest of my organization is going to continue making sure that that container goes from A to B. It's not going to work like that. We got to be able to bridge them and make them work together. This connection of domain expertise with technology talent, I think, is absolutely critical for us to take steps forward. And then, then you start to distill what are the elements that will get disrupted, and let's focus there.
And if I may, I think that's a very important point to the people listening here who are probably sitting in management roles throughout the industry. If you think that disruption is going to happen by either hiring people in who are going to do the job, or you're not going to be impacted, but somebody else will, I think you're horribly wrong. You will be impacted. You'll have to change your mindset. You have to do things differently. If you don't, then somebody will do it for you.
Wow, that's a strong message for our leaders out there. Well, we talk a little bit about talent. Let's transition to the topic on talent. A maritime career connects Singapore to the world and brings the world to Singapore. And I would say, for anybody who wants to be in a maritime industry, they have to have a global mindset and global view, global network, and global connections. Now, as a global hub, we are home to about 150 international shipping groups and more than 5,000 maritime establishments. That's quite a lot, Now, how do we continue to enhance our talent competitiveness to compete globally and attract the best?
That's a really interesting question, and I think something that hits at the core of it. I think there's a couple of things. First of all, from an industry perspective, right? And Singapore is as we saw earlier this week, an international maritime center. It's established as an international maritime center. And so in many respects, Singapore is a proxy for the industry. So in order to be able to attract talent in the industry, I like to say, you know what, when you're joining this industry, you're joining one of the very few places that actually has a time machine. And I think that's something really fascinating and interesting for people outside of this industry. They get to do Silicon Valley all over again, except this time in shipping. You don't get that many opportunities, right? You know what good looks like, and then you can come back and be able to do it. But again, connecting it with domain. So that's one thing. So I think from a Singapore context, how do we make sure that we can not only super concentrate the companies as they are today, but also start to super concentrate talent internationally in this location to serve an outcome? Specific initiatives related to the decarbonization center earlier on, related to some of the initiatives in terms of trying to make the port, let's say, more efficient, and so on and so forth. And that then becomes a beacon for others to follow. Really super concentrate to create that ecosystem. We use the Silicon Valley analogy a lot. Silicon Valley is essentially an ecosystem very wide for the tech industry. Copy and paste, time machine, let's do it over here. I think then the other element of it is also about, one is attracting talent, but the second is also then retaining the talent. And we need to be very cognizant about motivations for different skill sets and mindsets are going to be different. It isn't a one size fits all, and it isn't always about throwing money at it. The cultural element,
Yeah.
the collaboration element, the freedom element, the opportunity to shine with various solutions. These are things that are not so prevalent in the shipping industry yet,
Yes.
but I'm optimistic.
No, the way I look at it is Singapore has positioned itself very well for this. I think the most important thing is Singapore has created an infrastructure that works. And we've seen it with COVID, we've seen it before in many different contexts, that Singapore just works.
Yeah.
And that's the combination of both the physical infrastructure as well as the ecosystem of the companies and businesses that operate here that is creating that. You mentioned the word global, and I think that's the interesting part of it. I think Singapore has historically done very well by combining the great strengths of Singapore and the interests of Singapore with the global connection.
Yeah.
And I think it's critical as we move forward and move beyond COVID that we get that back.
Yes.
I've lived across the world, 11 different countries and so on. And I can say I'm not an expert in any of those, but I'm certainly not an expert in the countries where I haven't worked. If we want to be a hub for Southeast Asia and Asia, we need to have people from Southeast Asia here, and they need to learn in global companies and bring back that experience. For Singaporeans, I think that's a great way of learning from others, understanding what lies beyond. It's an opportunity to go and work other places, but it's certainly that connectivity that I think Singapore offers. And my hope is that Singapore will retain that, because you cannot create regional and global head offices for business by only having Singaporean talent. You will grow and develop the Singaporean talent by engaging with people and technology that comes from outside, which is exactly why Silicon Valley is incredibly successful, right? It has created an unbelievable ecosystem of the best people in the world who come in and help and develop, and at the same time creates growth in the local economy and builds capabilities. So I think if Singapore thinks of itself as the maritime Silicon Valley, that's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, that's fabulous. You mentioned talent ecosystem. I think that's the way we should see it in terms of how we continue to grow our position and our strength in the global footprint, I would say. Now, on the same topic, how you talk about new ideas, new skill sets that our shipping talent may lack today, but is needed to move forward for the future of shipping. So what are some of the advice you can give to young talents who are considering a career in maritime, and also experienced professionals who are looking to move into a maritime career?
Advice to come into the industry. I think, let's pick up on a couple of themes we talked about. I think ultimately it's the backbone of world trade. And if COVID has shown one thing, it's lifted the veil of, if I can call it, secrecy. You go into the store and you buy your Nikes or your Adidas, but you never even think, how did it get there? I always am a proponent that I wish we had a little tag there that says brought to you by MV whatever, so that you kind of realize that, oh, hang on, that came on a ship. So I think being the backbone of global trade, yes, it has its ups and downs, but the concept of moving physical goods will always be relevant. The second element that I think the theme that we picked up earlier on is this concept of a time machine. Guys, where do you get the opportunity to go back in time and do it right? I think that's phenomenal. I think the third thing is really shipping, and the people in shipping is, the fundament behind it is international. It is global. I would like to say that the people in shipping are really ultimately citizens of the world. Ships are registered somewhere, they're operated somewhere else, the cargoes are coming from somewhere else, a third place is flagging it, and so on and so forth. To be a citizen of the world, I think, is simply a note of optimism and hope, and I think that would really resonate with the generation that we want to attract. And I think the final one is about already today, and I know there's a lot of debate on the environment and sustainability and so on and so forth. Look, shipping has 80 to 85 or 90% of world trade. On a per ton basis, it is today very efficient, but it has to get much better. There's no doubt about it. It's a massive challenge. And I think this is an opportunity for the younger members of our community to really be able to come and be part of something bigger something more interesting, and something that'll have a lasting impact in a really dramatic way. And I hope that resonates as well.
Wow, exciting times.
It is exciting times. I think shipping is and will always be, the key capability, I think, in shipping is problem solving, right? Everything every day brings a new problem, a new challenge, and so on. And if you thrive on solving really complex problems that span the world, I think shipping and maritime is the place to go. I think the idea that technology has a place and a role to play, and that shipping will probably transform faster over the next 5 years than some other industries who've gone through that. And then this idea of being global. There's a lot of companies and businesses that say they're global, but they are often global in the fact that they have a global footprint, but they don't necessarily connect in the same way as shipping does. A ship connects physically throughout its entire journey. And when you work in a global logistics or shipping company, every day you talk to somebody in a different country solving a different problem for a different customer, right? Whether it's a pair of shoes, sofa, a computer, it doesn't matter. It's all gone through, carried by MV, whatever.
Yes.
And that fact that we spread across industries, I think is such an interesting and exciting job to have.
Yeah, and let me bring your attention to something both of you talk about, which is shipping is the backbone of global trade. Now, I think it's time for us to make shipping at the forefront of global trade. How do we pivot that? How do we tell a better story to our audience, to professionals who are looking to make a difference here? How can we tell a different story so they'll be excited, even if it is now at the back, right? How can we make it much more visible?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think a lot of it boils back down to sort of the culture in the industry. I mean, ultimately for many decades, the industry's operated on largely an information arbitrage. And that gets disrupted with some of the tools and sort of the internet and so on and so forth. I think now people no longer want to be, they don't want to be shy about what they're doing. I think people want to be proud about it. I think we're seeing a lot of international forums making that to the fore. I think that the COVID scenario, the resilience that supply chains have had to show in order to continue, ultimately a lot of that is predicated on the work that's being done in the maritime industry as well. And I think that we shouldn't be shy about the efforts and what it takes to get cargoes from A to B. I think the narrative has to move from, and apologies to all my journalist friends out there, the narrative has to move from purely the maritime journals to the front page of the consumer journals.
Yeah.
I think, the seafarer situation at the moment, the supply chain resilience issue at the moment, the reason it's got so much traction is because photographs of empty supermarket shelves and photographs of ships with seafarers in a lot of challenges have hit that news, but it hit mainstream news.
Yeah.
We've got to be proud enough, smart enough, and fast enough to make sure that a lot of the efforts that we're doing hits mainstream news. We have to think about what resonates in the B2C space to make sure we get our B2B space up front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the sad thing is that the biggest news in the last 12 months in shipping was the one time where it went wrong.
Yes.
But perhaps that also highlighted the importance of it. And I don't think we should be focusing on trying to get attention in media by letting things go wrong. But to me, it's amazing that we just take it for granted that we go into a shop or we order something online. And I would broaden that beyond just maritime. It's also ships, it's planes, it's trains, and it's trucks, right? Every single day, as we're sleeping and getting on with our normal life, there are people out there on the roads, on airplanes, in ships, making all of this work. And I don't think people appreciate it. 12 months ago, during the beginning of COVID, everybody talked about the heroes, right?
Yes.
So it was healthcare, it was police, and it was also transportation and logistics. It's been forgotten a little bit, but we're still shipping masks and respirators and shoes and sofas and computers, and we're doing it very well. You talk about the rollout of COVID. Yes, there are certainly issues about production. There's about local administration of it. But I would say that the global supply chain has handled one of the biggest logistics challenges in the last 10, 20 years very, very well. We've just gotten on with it and gotten it done. And I think that's what happened in logistics. We just get on with it. But yeah, I would wish we would get a little more focus and attention in media, except for just the one time where it goes wrong.
Okay, all right. Well, I will pick some questions from the audience as well, who have submitted a few questions, which is something related to mid-career switch. Question is, what are the opportunities for a mid-career switch to the maritime sector if they don't have the prior experience?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Look, I have personal experience with this. So I started out, I'm a seagoing marine engineer, came ashore. I think the reality is that there are many opportunities out there. I think that we need to accept this concept of share what you know, but learn what you don't. A mid-career switch means that you need to go into a part of the organization or another organization in order to learn what you don't. What I think sometimes is the challenge is that people feel that if I'm doing a mid-career switch, I need to get remunerated for all the stuff I've done and remunerated for the switch and then remunerated for the new stuff that I'm going to do. I think a little bit of humility around that would go a long way. I think that we shouldn't feel shy of internships, even in the mid-30s, even in the early 40s. I think there's a tremendous value to learn different areas within that. I'm going to say that people in their current roles also, not to be shy to buddy up. It doesn't have to be a top-down initiative. It doesn't have to be an HR-sanctioned initiative, if I can say that. Buddy up with a kind of role, but most importantly, visualize what you think you want to do, and then you plot your steps forward. Nobody's going to babysit anybody and nobody's going to spoon feed anybody. I think it's really incumbent on every individual. And I'm always happy to share my own experience or even discuss further with whoever's interested.
I'm going to move on to the next question. This is related to the earlier topic shared by our Mercer team with regards to job redesign. Well, with the changing business landscape, and the workforce demographics, companies are rethinking the why, the how, and the who does the work. And clearly, job redesign is a vital strategy to achieve that. Can you share how your organization has benefited from job redesign initiatives? Thomas?
Yeah, so I could probably give some very specific examples here from Singapore, where one of the companies that we have, ST Logistics, is deeply involved in logistics and operation of warehouses, which has gone through a tremendous change over the past 10 years, where you move from a very operational situation to automation now with robotics in all the warehouses. And we've spent and invested a lot in trying to take the people who previously did some of the manual work and take them into the roles where they are now suddenly using robots and so on. And I think it starts with curiosity. First, it ain't that hard. There's clearly some lessons that has to be learned, but if you've done a piece of work before, you actually understand what it is that the technology is trying to achieve. So I don't think that the leap is as big as it sounds, but I think it starts with curiosity. I've met people who've been doing a job for a long time and says, that's who I am, that's what I do. And that's not the right approach. I think it's much more to say, well, I've got this skill set, I want to learn, I want to develop. How can I bring on the new skills? And we're certainly very committed to doing that. There's a big value of retaining people in an organization who understands the culture, the values, who feel an attachment to the organization, who we can then bring forward rather than to bring in external resources to plug the holes. Certainly we should bring in external help where we need it, and sometimes inspiration. But we certainly would like to grow our internal talent by doing things differently. And we think that's an interesting journey.
Fabulous.
I think that resonates very well with us as well. And I think there's, a number of different initiatives, and it starts with embracing new tools, whether it's RPAs or whether it's new software systems and so on and so forth. The next level behind that is when you want to collaborate with your providers to develop those, and then you use your domain experts, guys who are very good at what they do today, to help improve those tools. And that kind of raises where those people sit in kind of the value chain of development. And that's something we support tremendously as well.
Great. Any support or advice that you can offer to smaller organizations who are embarking on this but may lack the resources or expertise?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, why are you changing? Because often people are not clear on why do they need to change. And I think the second thing is probably change before you have to. It's very painful when you're a company in crisis because you've lost technology or leadership in your industry, regardless of what size, to change when things are bad. Although it's the easiest explanation to your people because they can see it. But I think exploring the why first, why do we need to change? It's not about a problem today, it's about a problem or a challenge that we're seeing in the future. And then what is it that we actually need to do different? And in a small company, you might not have the resources or the time, but I think if you don't invest that time up front, you'll really be disappointed later.
I think if I could, I'd like to add maybe one or two things as well to that. One is the MPA released the digitalization playbook, maritime digitalization playbook. And really there's a number of ambassadors over there. And the intent is to kind of have a showcase of how to approach some of these initiatives.
Yeah.
But what's more important is it's an opportunity to connect with some of the larger companies that are going over those initiatives. And I think the second thing is, I really hope for SMEs, don't be shy. Reach out, either to your larger customers, reach out to the people that you've seen or that you feel are engaging with some of these. I think that many people will be surprised at how open people who are engaging these transformations are to sharing their experience, because nobody actually knows the right answer.
Fantastic. Well, we'll come to the final segment of this panel, and I have one question for both of you. So here goes. Like the Norwegians' love for the sea, how do we cultivate the young's love for the sea?
That's a great one. Final part. In an opening speech I heard earlier, and I want to sort of quote that and paraphrase it. The seas really, rather than considering them as bodies that separate us, to consider them as bodies that connect us, and the kind of opportunities, both leisure as well as business and work, open up so many different focus areas. And I think that if people, especially as an island nation as Singapore, the seas are all around us. It starts with what you do on the weekends, and hopefully it motivates you to what you do on the weekday.
Yeah, I think I'm not Norwegian, but I was born fairly close in Denmark. And I think the ocean is ever present as it is in Singapore. And especially historically, the ocean was where you both got your food, but also many other things. But it was also a place of respect. So when people talk about love, I think it's love and respect. If you think about decarbonization and climate change, I don't think everybody appreciates the role the sea plays. There's 50 times more carbon embedded in the oceans than there is in the atmosphere. A single whale contains more carbon than 1,000 trees. So if nothing else, the solution to climate change is to be found in the ocean. So if you're a Singaporean and you're living within 10 kilometers, I would say, look to the sea for the solution to our future challenges.
Fabulous. So we certainly have very interesting opportunities ahead, for anyone who's considering a career in maritime. And for those who are in the maritime industry right now, I would say plenty more opportunities to make a difference. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your thoughts and your experience with us. I don't think there's any other questions out there that we are tackling, because we have already talked about it. And now we'll come to the end of this, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa, Nicole, and Thomas, for such an enlightening and thought-provoking discussion. I hope our maritime companies are all pumped and ready to ramp up your very own workforce transformation. On this note, please allow me to share quickly on two initiatives from MPA. First, we want to hear more from maritime companies about job redesign. We will be organizing subsector-specific focus group discussions in May, and we hope you will join us to share about the jobs that your organization thinks might be suitable for exploring job redesign. It is recommended that participants for the discussions are at the head of function levels or higher. We look forward to having this conversation with you. Second, some of you may be familiar with the Circle of HR Innovators Network, CHRO. It is a platform where HR leaders and practitioners discuss key issues such as talent attraction and competency development and share best practices and updates. We would like to encourage companies to join the network and tap into the community's collective wisdom to help companies better execute their transformation journey. If any of your organizations are interested in participating in these initiatives, please scan this QR code to fill out the form. If you have any feedback for today's forum, please also share your thoughts with us via the same form. Once again, thank you Mr. Niam Meng, our speakers Rupali and Kabir from Mercer, and our industry partners Melissa, Nakul, and Thomas for being here with us today at the Maritime Manpower Forum 2021. A big thank you to all participants who joined us virtually as well. We hope it was useful and insightful for you. And look forward to working with you on transforming our maritime workforce. Wishing all a wonderful day. Thank you.